Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement. On today's video, yes, it's Wednesday, so it's another midweek mini mail call. I'm getting a little behind on my packages, so I need to kind of accelerate things when it comes to opening and showing things on the channel. Before I get to the packages though, a little bit of housekeeping. I'm actually shooting this on a brand new camera. My old camera is this one right here. It's a Panasonic G95, a Lumix, and I gotta say, I hate this camera. If you follow me on Twitter, you might have seen a post where I ranted and raged about this camera. It was really driving me crazy. One of the problems is the microphone jack pops out of this thing really easily, so it doesn't record through my external microphone, which is what you see on my shirt here. It uses the internal microphones, which on this camera are terrible. This also has horrible autofocus, which hunts all the time and requires me to manually fix the focus, which sometimes I do incorrectly or I forget to do. So yeah, the focus is a big problem. The camera I'm shooting on right now is a Sony, I think I need to get this right, a Sony ZX1 or a ZV1. It's a much smaller camera. It's designed for content creators and vlogging, has some amazing features, and I hope that this video quality at least looks as good as my camera, as this camera, but also doesn't hunt as much. So you'll find out soon enough if I like this camera or not. But so far, hopefully so good. This is literally the first time I've used the camera. I haven't even set the white balance, so I might be adjusting that in future videos, but hopefully it's gonna work well. Anyway, enough about the housekeeping. Let's get to the mail call video. Oh wait, that was weird. Let's get right to it. So the primary focus on today's mail call video is going to be Macintosh stuff. But before I get to that, I had something that came that I wanted to show, and I shot a little clip of me opening it with this camera handheld, so I apologize for the shaky cam. But then we'll come back to the regular scheduled mail call, which will be Mac stuff. Sorry for the handheld video, but this came at the P.O. box today, so something from OSH Stencils, and it came priority overnight. So I figured I should open it up and not wait for the regular mail call schedule, because stencils sounds like it might be related to the SIMM video I just put out recently. And actually I did open this, and yep, this is exactly what this is. That's a solder, what is it called, a stencil for applying the solder paste onto those PCBs, because I struggled so much with all that extra solder paste. So with this, you can tape this over the actual PCB. I guess I need a little jig or something. And then I can squeegee the paste into there. And included with it was this piece of cardboard, which I assume is for holding that PCB. So I'd put the little circuit board there and then lay that this metal stencil over top of this, I guess. And look, there's a credit card here. Solder paste spreader. So you put a little on there and then nice sound effect, right? And it looks like a sticker. And this, I don't know who this came from. So whoever sent this, doesn't really say here, it just came from them, addressed to me. Thank you very much for sending this. I'm gonna have to definitely try this out. I did not solder any more of those SIMM memory modules from the video. I think I did 4, 1 got ruined. So what, there's 5 more? So I can definitely try this out. I'm gonna have to do some reading about the right technique though on how to do it. But yes, sweet, thank you very much. Okay, we have a package here. This is international. This package is from Deutschland. Hi to all my German viewers. It comes from Jonas in Kamen, K-A-M-E-N. I am sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. And came via Deutsche Post. Most of the stuff I get from Germany either comes like FedEx or DHL, but of course this is their mail system here. Oh neat, I can see packing material that's newspaper. So we're gonna have some German newspaper to read. I will point out that Germany is, I think, my number 3 viewership country. So it would be the United States, the United Kingdom, UK, and then Germany. So that's amazing. Hi to all my German viewers. It's really amazing and flattering to me that Germany is so high on the list, considering that my channel's in English, and a lot of German people do speak English, but still, it's not their native language. I probably talk too fast. People don't understand me, and yet people still watch. It's amazing, and I absolutely love it. Okay, so the letter here is printed on a color dot matrix printer. What? Printed on a Seiko 24-pin color dot matrix. I love it. Let's put that to the side and let me unpack this stuff, and then we'll take a look at the letter. In this box are all sorts of amazing goodies. Oh, this box, it's so full of stuff. Novell netwear. Look at these incredible anti-static bags. I just love it. And then all these perfect little white boxes here. I think, no, there's even more. There's one more thing here, brown box. Okay, so the letter says, "Hello, Adrian, and greetings from Germany. I hope you can use some of the parts or give them to other people in your community." He goes on to say, "Sorry that I could not send you a Mac 286 NuBus card." Oh, that's right. We had talked about this on email. He originally had said that he had at one point a NuBus card for a Macintosh that was a 286 like processor card, basically like a PC on a card for a NuBus Max. So like my Mac 2 Ci would actually be able to run PC software, but I guess he wasn't able to find that. He has included, though, in this package, a Novell NL1000 Local Talk Interface 8-bit ISA card. Oh, cool. So that means I can use AppleTalk on a PC. I'll have to figure out how to make that works. Quantity 2 Apple Local Talk Interface, COPS, whatever that's, COPS for 8-bit ISA. 1 Farallon Local Talk Interface for COPS as well. 2 Apple 3-pin Local Talk serial adapters. Okay, so a bunch more Apple stuff. And then he goes on to list a bunch of stuff that he has sent, which is everything you see here. I will skip over the parts list here. We'll open this stuff together. And then at the end, he says, "I wish you good health and hope for other interesting videos from you." I hope so too. I hope I'm able to make interesting videos. So cool. Thank you very much. So whoa, Jonas, that was a lot of stuff. Let's take a closer look at this all on the bench. So before we take a closer look at the stuff Jonas sent, I have something else to take a closer look at. And it's this thing right here. It's a Macintosh IIsi. And the reason why I'm bringing this out actually is a bunch of the things that Jonas sent me are for this computer. And it just so happens that someone here in Portland was like, "Hey, would you like a Mac IIsi?" And I said, "Sure." And here we have it. Now, one thing that's really apparent about this particular computer is the extreme yellowing. I mean, look at this. I've actually never seen a Macintosh that is quite as bad as this. I mean, look at the back panel. So these here are gray, which or the power plugs here are the platinum color that this case should be. And it's really decidedly quite an orange looking computer. Now, I'm not super familiar with the Mac IIsi, but looking quickly at the back here, we have the regular complement of ports starting from ADB, floppy, monitor, built in onto the motherboard, SCSI, 2 serial ports, and a sound input and output. This is the power button right here to turn it off and on. It has a pass-through for the power connector, so you can plug your monitor into here. So when the computer turns on, it does have a soft power on feature. It will turn on the monitor or whatever's connected to this port here. Of course, this is a fan under this fan grill, and then we have one slot here, which seems to be populated with what looks like a video card because I see a 15-pin connector there. That does match this connector here for video. Now, people are going to need to correct me in the comments, but I think this machine is similar in architecture to the Mac SE-30 and also the Mac 2 Ci. I think they're all from around the same period of time. This might have been like a lower cost version of the Mac 2 Ci, or maybe at the time when this was out, the Mac 2 CX was out. I'm not totally clear on all of the timeline for everything, but I think the IIsi's big claim to fame was that it was the least expensive of the color Macintoshes at the time where this was released. It is 68,000 based, and I can pop the cover off here. It has 2 little thingies and push with your thumbs, and then I do know that this has a 68030 in it. I'm not sure the speed, so it should be comparable-ish to the Mac 2 Ci that I have and the SE-30. Anyhow, let's take a closer look inside of this thing, see what's going on. All right, so this is an expansion card in here. It's pretty long, goes all the way to the front of the case here. I need to remove this, so I have to take these thumb screws out, I would imagine. Well, there goes one of them. Thumb screw, another thumb screw. And then this probably can come out somehow. There we go. It's a RasterOps video card, and actually, by the look of the connector there, this is a NuBus card, while this connector here, and from my recollection, is a PDS slot, processor direct slot, which is exactly the same slot that's in the SE-30. Free this card here from the slot adapter thingy. So yeah, RasterOps video card. Don't really know much about this, doesn't really have a model number or anything on here, but these were high speed or high RAM video cards that are capable of doing a lot more than the onboard video on here. This thing could drive like a 14-inch monitor, a 640 by 480 kind of resolution. If you wanted to use higher resolution, I think you needed to use a card like this. Now my Mac IIci does have 3 slots, which means that this would work in that computer, although it might be too long. I'm not too sure about that. But either way, it is NuBus, it's compatible. And then we take a look here. This looks like, you won't be able to read it because of the shadow, but up above this connector it says NuBus adapter card, Apple computer. So this is actually made by Apple, and I notice here it's got a 68882 on here, which is a math coprocessor, which would indicate that this thing does not have that built in the motherboard. And that's in contrast to the Mac SE-30, which does, as does the Mac IIci. So even using this adapter card with no card plugged in will give you that math coprocessor, which will accelerate some applications. Well, this is the floppy drive, and what's funny is I don't think this is the original floppy drive from this computer. It's got a door on here, and the drive looks like a PC drive, although it's definitely got the Mac connector on it. So it's a Mac floppy drive, but it's got no mounting bracket. There is no way that a floppy drive goes in here with no mounting bracket. So someone at some point must have switched this out, and they literally just put a disk drive in there, and it does stay in, well, sort of stays in, but obviously just lifts right out. So that's not quite right. I think from an age perspective, this computer came out in the very late 80s or very early 90s, which means that the floppy drive that would be in here would be much more like all the floppy drives that you've seen me service on this channel. Here is the hard drive, and this also was just sort of sitting in there. So let's unplug this. It's SCSI hard drive. And there it is, it's a quantum drive. Now I can tell that this bracket that it's in is actually, it's the floppy drive bracket, and the hard drive is not even screwed in. Let's see, I have to pry this out of here. There we go, it's coming out. There it is, 230 megabyte hard drive, which I think is larger capacity than this would have in it as well. So this was from some later Macintosh, and yes, this is definitely a floppy drive bracket thing. It would go like this. The floppy drive would be inserted into here. And then maybe this is the one that comes from this computer. Let's see if it clicks into place. It sure does. This is someone replaced the floppy and the hard drive, and then they used, why would they use the floppy mechanism on the hard drive? That's kind of nonsense. Here is a regular older style Mac floppy drive, one that I've serviced. And I think this is the right drive for this thing. Yep, it definitely is. So the screws line up perfectly there, and they will on the other side as well. Yep. So being a Macintosh from that same era as the SE-30 and IIci, that means one thing. This motherboard is gonna need to be recapped. Now, luckily the battery was already missing here, so it didn't leak, and there's no damage from that. And there are definitely SMD caps here, which I can see a little bit of the cloudiness around them, so they have started to leak, but actually looks to be very minor. So I'm gonna try to pop this power supply out. There's a little thing on the lever on the front. I think I lift that, and this should pop away. There we go. So there is the power supply. Nice little module. Ooh, that looks a bit weird. Definitely, I'd say there's some leaky caps going on in there. That is some serious corrosion on there. And I do see what looks a little green and corroded right there on the connector. Okay, this fan here has to come out somehow. All right, the fan is out. The way it works is you just squeeze the bottom. There are little teeth here and there, and it kind of holds in the case. Squeeze it, slides up. And there is the motherboard. So unlike the SE-30 and the Mac IIci, there's only 4 SIMM slots. There is a slot here, which I think is for ROM. There's the PDS slot right there. We have the SCSI and power connectors here. Floppy drive over there. There's the power connector. There's definitely built-in video RAM. That's this RAM over here. Let's take a quick look inside this power supply because I want to do a quick test on this before I recap the motherboard. So let's pop this open. There's definitely something leaking out of here. There's like wetness on here. So yeah, I'd say that's some electrolyte that is coming out of something inside this power supply. I'm actually going to spray a little bit of isopropyl alcohol on the connector there just to try to wash it off a little bit. Actually, on second thought, I think I'm going to pull the motherboard out. I think I pushed these little clips. I had to do that off camera, but yeah, you push these little tabs and the motherboard slides that way and then it should lift out. I want to go wash this over the sink because I don't want this green goop like to run all over the inside of the computer, which it already has, so I'll have to clean that up. Oh, and look, another dead bug in there. Okay, is that a spider? Yeah, I'm going to be cleaning that out now. Now let's just take a quick look at this fan here. I don't see much dust in here at all. That would imply, well, it's a little dusty, but that would imply that this machine is pretty low hour. That's kind of cool. It's funny that it's so yellow, but it definitely doesn't seem like it was used that much. So the power supply, let me just figure out how to open this thing and let's look for leaky caps. One screw, that just comes right off. That's pretty nice. Yes, I can definitely see, and I'm sorry it's a little dark, there's definitely leakage going on in this area over here. Over here on this side, everything looks fine. Over there, not so much. So I'm gonna need to get this thing out of here somehow. See that green goop? It's green and definitely a sign of leaky electrolyte, but it looks kind of wet down there on the board. So definitely one or more of these caps has leaked. So this power supply is a little bit like a jigsaw puzzle, but I think I got it. Took a bunch of screws out. This back plate just comes off and I think this can slide right out. I think I have to like bend the case a little bit here. Come on. Come on. There you go. You're out. Oh, and look at that leakage. Oh yeah. That is gross. Very goopy in there. See that down there at the bottom? That's leakage. And there we go. Apple conformal coated this whole section of the board, the high voltage side. Low voltage side, not so much. And it's and the traces, they're starting to get eaten away by the leaky caps. Oh dear. I mean, it is wet. You see that? That's the leaky electrolyte. Now I'm wondering which are the bad guys. I think I just need to take them all off. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 caps in this area here. I'm gonna remove them all. Ugh. Well, the caps are off and what a mess. What a mess. It's super gross under there. Yeah, there's some pretty crusty green things under here and yeah, not good. It seems like these long skinny caps were the bad culprits. And these little ones, maybe not so much, but it's kind of hard to tell. Yeah, the leads are all corroded on these. And I accidentally removed like probably an inductor here. And it's shiny because there's so much crappy leakage. So this is a big mess. I'm gonna just take this to the sink with some isopropyl and I'm gonna try to clean this up. All right, there's post-cleaning. The PCB itself definitely has damage, so to speak. If you look, you can see under where the caps were there. That's sort of the original color, but everywhere else has this muddled color. So I gave this thing a really good thorough wash, including all the area over here. A lot of electrolyte was underneath these components. It all sort of came out. But of course, this is a high voltage part, so it needs some serious time for drying. I also really scrubbed the whole bottom of it. For testing of the motherboard here, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to use a different power supply. This is one out of a Mac 2 CI, spare one. The corrosion here is simply because of a battery explosion. It did not get inside this power supply. This power supply does work. The connector looks the same. And yeah, sure enough, that actually does go together. On the original power supply on this machine, it was that orientation, you know, with the plug towards the back. But this one appears to be like this, but it does go together. So let me prop this power supply up. So the Mini Pro, screwdriver over there, There we go. That should be good to go for testing this motherboard out. All right, Acer monitor is connected to the motherboard through this adapter. This is ready to go. I have a power cord here. Let me hold this while I plug this in. It's all very precarious. Okay, let's see if I push the power button on here, does it turn on? It does. Excellent. Oh, I got a picture too. I'm not expecting this to fully work, but I want to see at least try to boot, maybe. Hey, look at that. We have a mouse pointer. We have the gray screen. That's a great sign. No floppy drive, no hard drive. It's obviously not going to boot. I'd like to see it do a little bit more than that. Like give me the flashing question mark. I am not getting the flashing question mark. I am going to chalk that up to the capacitor issue. So I'm just going to do a quick recap. All right, this is where we are. So this is the motherboard. And if you notice, there's a mix of tantalums and electrolytics. And that's because these were the 47 microfarads that I had in stock. I only had 4. So I ran out, and instead of trying to order some and whatever, I ended up going into my spare parts, and I found this network card, and it had some tantalums on it that looked to be the right size, so I stole them. Now, unfortunately, these tantalums are 22 microfarad, but they're 25 volts, so they're not quite the 47 that this motherboard needed, but I went ahead and installed them in all the positions anyways. This takes 11 capacitors. I did manage to get 4 of the right value in there, and I put 22s everywhere else. If this doesn't work properly, you can always just remove these and put on the right ones later, but I wanted to get this thing up and running so I could do some testing for this video. And if we take a look at the power supply here, I've also recapped this. Now on the back, I scratched off any of the solder mask that was looking corroded and horrible, and I painted it with lacquer. And this was after I did replace the capacitors. Now, I didn't have any of the right capacitors in stock. Oh, actually, correction. I had a couple Nichicons. They're these little ones like this one down here, and I think that one. But these 2 green ones, I ended up stealing off a dead motherboard I had. They're low ESR. They check out perfectly on the tester, so that's great. And then also these 2 little ones here. These are the 220s. I don't think they were actually bad, but I changed them out anyways. But yeah, all of the caps I put on here all test good. So, oh, I gotta put the cover back on here. I had it off because when I washed this board, water had gotten everywhere, and I just wanted everything to dry out. And a little bit of water had sort of gone inside of the relay there. So I'll be putting that back on. So this thing needs to be put back together so I can test this thing out and see if it works. I guess I could use that Mac2CI power supply if this power supply doesn't quite come back to life. But with a good thorough washing it's had, I completely predict that this should work fine. RAM is back in the board, power supply is reassembled, no extra screws. And I'm gonna do the old prop this thing up outside the case thing. Actually, you know what, before we do this, let me put a little deoxit on the connector here. Remember all that corrosion that was on there? It really cleaned up well after the, alcohol bath and the wash that I gave it, but just in case, right? All right, this flashlight seems to be perfect for propping under the power supply. It's a little precarious. Monitor's plugged in. Let me plug the power in. Guess this will be the big test. Actually, first thing I'm gonna do is plug the power into this. Okay, nothing seems to have exploded. Good thing. I'm gonna unplug it from the wall. We'll put this on the motherboard. Prop it up with the flashlight. There we go. Plug it into the wall. All right, we are ready for testing. Here we go. Oh, doesn't work. Oh wait, it might have worked. What am I saying? There's no fan on this power supply. I need a way to measure the voltage. Multimeter, where's the multimeter? Well, we're getting 5 volts. It's a good sign. I'm measuring on the bypass caps that I installed. That one's at 12 volts, 12.2. Good thing I installed 16 volt bypass caps, right? 5.9 on that one. Huh, we're not getting any kind of image though. So this is actually worse. Did I ruin this thing? Actually, I'm gonna go grab the Mac2CI power supply since we know we had a sign of life with that one. Okay, here we go. Ready to go with the Mac2CI one. There's a fan, so of course this one turns on. The other one was turning on too, it's just I couldn't see the fan. No signal on the VGA. Pushing the button on the keyboard does actually turn the computer on. What could be wrong here? All right, I put the computer back in the case so we can hear the speaker, because the speaker has contacts under the motherboard right here, as does the front power LED. So I want to hear what this thing sounds like. And of course, I've put in the original power supply. So we'll plug this in. Well, that sounds normal. You guys heard that, right? Why do we have no video? What is happening here? It's also interesting that it turns itself on as soon as I plugged it in. Try that again. Very normal sounding. And there's a click there, which I think is the normal initialization sound on the Macintosh. Oh, wait a second. Okay, wait a second. I'm looking at the jumpers here, and I might have them configured incorrectly. This is the video adapter, and the reality is, I think this computer only works at 640 by 480. There's a little chart here, and 640 by 480, it says 1 and 2 should be on, and they are now, but originally I had 1, 2, 3, and 4 all turned on, which I just don't think is quite right. Okay, here we go. Let's try again. Turns itself on. Oh, wait, look, picture. Oh, wait a second. That was it. Just got to check your switches. Ah, look at that. Okay, we have the mouse pointer, which I think is connected. Yep, it is. So we're sort of like where we were before, where it's seemingly not booting. But you know what? I should plug a hard drive in. We should give it a test with a hard drive. Oh, check it out. As I stepped away to grab the hard drive, flashing disk. That is not something I got before I did the recapping. Oh, I forgot to mention, when I took the caps off, I also took off the original battery holder and installed a 2032 one. You know me, I love my 2032s. All right, put the hard drive back in. That was in this machine. We plugged the power back in. There we go. See if this thing boots. It's booting! Success! So I looked in my spare parts bin and I found a hard drive bracket from a Mac IIci. I had a Mac IIci that was given to me that the battery exploded in. That's where that power supply came from I showed earlier. Well, most of the parts in that computer were ruined, but I saved the hard drive bracket as well because it's good. And while it's not a perfect fit in here, because it doesn't actually clip in, if it just went down in the case, probably a few more millimeters, it actually would clip in. The two clips on the side would grab onto this, but it doesn't. It actually bottoms out before it gets to the little grooves. But either way, it's pretty good. I mean, the hard drive is in here. I mean, yeah, if the machine were shipped, this hard drive could go moving around inside here, but just picking it up or whatever, the hard drive is pretty sturdy. Like, I'm lifting it by the drive and you notice it lifted the computer. So this will work in the meantime. And then for floppy drives, I have this one here, which says 800K clean lubed 619 epoxy on eject gear. Or eject motor. I think I had cracked the eject motor or something, and there's JB Weld on it. But it's in a bracket that should absolutely work in this computer. Well, let's just give it a quick test here. Yep, it clips right in. Yes, it's 800K, it's not a 1.44. I could swap that out, but for now, I'm just gonna stick something random in here so there's a disk drive that at least works. And then we just have the fan to put in, and I have cleaned this up a little bit. It still has a little bit of dust in there, but it's minor. Hopefully this works fine. And we just push this down into here. There we go. And then I'm just gonna populate the battery holder with a 2032, like so. If you noticed earlier, as I was testing the power supplies, the machine just started turning itself on as soon as the power supply was plugged into power. And that's because of the power switch. There's actually nothing wrong with it. So that's the switch right there. What Apple has done is if you insert a screwdriver into it, you can turn it like that. When the switch is in this position, the machine will just power on immediately as soon as you plug the power cable in. And unlike on modern computers where if you hold the power button down where it turns itself back off again, that's not the way the power on circuit works on these original Macintoshes. Is if you're holding this button down permanently, the machine will just always power up. And in fact, if you go to the shutdown menu in the system once it's booted up, it'll turn off and turn right back on because the power button is held down like this. So with a screwdriver, you just give it a little push and turn it and it releases. And now the line that you see there should be parallel to the desktop, at least on this computer, and you can push the button in, and that will keep this thing from turning on every time you plug the power cable in. All the cables are connected. Let's give this thing an actual power on test. I'm gonna push the button on the keyboard. It should turn everything on. Oh no, we got a crashing sound. Well, that's interesting. What's changed now compared to before? Let me just pull out the battery. I mean, I don't see how the battery could have any effect, but you never know. Oh, wow, look at that, the battery. How's that possible, that it made it unhappy? Well, I definitely identified the issue, so it was a boneheaded maneuver on my part. Basically, under the battery, there are lots of traces and vias, and I didn't put any kind of insulating material between the positive on the battery holder to the motherboard there, so it was shorting to some of the terminals underneath. In fact, I'm glad the computer still worked after doing that, because it was actually sending whatever was on those vias into the battery clock circuit thing, you know, whatever the battery is powering. So hopefully that didn't damage things. But anyways, I'm gonna put a little piece of plastic under there to insulate it. Okay, there we go. See this little white piece of plastic under here? I actually took a little card stock here. This is from a dead power supply. It's very thick, and it was isolating metal against high voltage 120 volts mains. So it's definitely good enough for the battery. So I just cut a little piece, and it extends about this far underneath the battery holder, because some of the positive terminal actually is on the very bottom side, or just a tiny bit actually. But anyways, it's under there, and I resoldered this pin, and I put a little bit of, just a tiny dab of hot glue there, plus there's one there and one on this side of the socket, or the holder, and that holds it all steady, and the battery's back in, and that did the trick. So I think at this point, this computer is now going to work and actually be reliable, because it seems like I keep saying it's fixed, and then something goes wrong. All right, here we go again. I'm hitting the power key on the keyboard. There it is. No unhappy Mac sound. That's a good sign. Got the gray screen. The pointer should come up in a split second. There it is. Excellent. And there it is. It's now booting. Now I do have to apologize. I have gone in here and I've actually set a couple things up. Like I cleaned up the desktop. There were some random files on it, and I set the clock just to make sure that it's gonna keep. In fact, the computer's been off for a while now since I did the little battery fix with that little piece of plastic. So let's see if it has the current date. It should be November the 1st. The year is 2001, but it should be November the 1st if it remembered the date properly. All right, if we check date and time, what are we gonna see? It should say November 1st. It does, excellent, November 1st, 2001. That means that I didn't damage anything with my little stupidity move there. So the Macintosh is showing that it has 9.2 megs of RAM, which clearly means that there's actually system memory on the motherboard. So that RAM that I thought was purely for video memory, I was clearly wrong. And this thing must have, I wonder how big the memory modules that are in here are. But I think if I go under monitors here, it's set for 256 colors. Look at this, memory allocation for built-in memory. Selects the max amount of colors in gray which you want to reserve memory for. So it's set to reserve memory for enough for 640 by 480 by 256 colors. So that's clearly taking away some of the system memory. So it's possible that there are, say, 2 megabytes on the motherboard, and maybe these SIMMs that are in here are 2 megs each. So there's 8 plus 2 on the motherboard, and that takes away 800K for the video. I'm not too sure, but either way, it's doing something like that. So off camera, I went ahead and I put this computer through its paces. I ran a bunch of games, ran a bunch of software on here. Everything seems to be working perfectly. And other than the fact that it's a little bit yellow still, I will address that at some point in the future, this machine is working great. And that's wonderful, because that means that I can finally get to testing some of the cool things that Jonas has sent me that work in this machine. So let me start breaking out the things that he's sent, and then I'll bring back this machine and we'll start doing some testing. All right, so the stuff that Jonas sent. So there's this NetWare box, and if we pop this open, inside is what I think is an AppleTalk card for the PC. Made by Novell, obviously, as is the box. This is probably the original box. Right there, you see it says Novell Incorporated. And for those that are interested, there is the board number, 738-176-001, Rev C as in Charlie. It does have a 9-pin connector on the back for the AppleTalk little dongle, and that's as opposed to the round serial port that's on like these Macintoshes. And it looks like in the box, there's actually the original manual as well, NL1000 supplement. Okay, maybe this is not the original manual, but just a supplement. I'm not too sure. Oh, look, there's a diagram showing how to make an AppleTalk network. It says here, the manual explains how to install the NL1000 in a NetWare file server. So it seems like if you were running Novell NetWare as your file server, you could add this card and then serve files to your Macintosh machines over AppleTalk. It's pretty cool. Now, I do have to wonder, can this be used on, say, Linux or DOS or Windows or something else to also interface to an AppleTalk network, or is it strictly for use with Novell NetWare? There was a floppy disk in the box here. It says boot disk. Just in case this disk is readable in DOS, I'm gonna stick it in my little PC here. Oh, hey, this has got some stuff on it. So I see here this thing boots pretty normally, then it runs something called CED, then FT2300XX and Net3. This seems like a Novell related thing. I kind of remember this Net3, and then you run the login command. Does anyone remember this stuff from Novell NetWare? Anyhow, this is a cool card if I can get this to work in something modern. So if anyone knows that this works in DOS 6.22 and you can somehow connect to AppleTalk, please let me know in the comment section. Now, in case this Novell network card wasn't enough, he actually went ahead and sent 3 other ISA AppleTalk cards for the PC. Now, if you take a look at these 3 cards, they all look absolutely identical, except this one here is missing its ROM chip. But otherwise, they're the same. But they are branded sort of different. If we look at this card here, notice at the top here it says Farallon, right? They were a company that made plenty of AppleTalk type cables, accessories, adapters, things like that. This card here and the other one, Apple Computer. So it seems like to me that Farallon probably designed this AppleTalk adapter for the PC and Apple just bought it and rebranded it. If anyone's familiar with this little shenanigans, please let me know. I'll be very curious. And what's interesting is if we look at this Apple card, it has an Apple barcode sticker there. And if we look at this other Apple card here, it still says Apple. Down here it says AppleTalk PC card. And on the Farallon card, it says AppleTalk PC card there as well. There's a sticker over here. But then Farallon is clearly a sticker. And I'm pretty sure that underneath that, the silkscreen probably just says Apple Computer. Now, I did mention that these cards here all also have the 9-pin connector on it, just like this card. Now, there were Macintoshes that used this as well, and it was the Mac 128 and the Mac 512. Both of those machines supported AppleTalk, but they had this 9-pin connector for its serial ports, while the Mac Plus and everything after that, like this Mac IIsi, used the round mini DIN connector for the serial ports and the AppleTalk. Now, Jonas went ahead and sent a huge plethora of accessories here to use with these cards. And look at this, right here on the top is an Apple branded adapter here for AppleTalk that has the 9-pin connector on it. And interesting is it's only using 4 pins, which makes sense, I suppose, because that's all that AppleTalk is even using here. And there's really not a lot going on inside of this, connecting the connection here to these connectors. Just some passives, I think. I haven't opened one of these out, but it's nothing crazy complicated. Now, all the AppleTalk adapters so far that I've shown on the channel are the PhoneNet type that have RJ11 type jacks, and this is the original Apple connection here. So unfortunately, the signaling, I think, is mostly compatible with those PhoneNet adapters I have, but clearly the physical connector is not. So I can't really use this Apple one, because I don't think I have more of them, although there's probably more in this pile here. So let's check that out. So here is a cable, and yeah, this is actually an AppleTalk cable. I don't know if it's the real thing, but hopefully you can see there, it's a DIN 3, a mini DIN 3. I'll have to do a little bit of research, but perhaps I can cut this cable and have this DIN connector on one end and a phone connector on the other end, so I can interface the PhoneNet stuff to this. But there might be more to it, but if you're familiar or you have some documentation you can point me to, please do. And it looks like here is another AppleTalk cable. This is like a non-Apple branded one just because the connector looks different. And it comes with a little coupler All right, so what's this? This is just another phone net adapter. So this is a serial round mini DIN serial connection for a Mac to phone net. I already have a ton of these. The branding on here says PNet with an LED, ZZ. And here is another one of the adapters. Oh, and it has the terminator in there. You only need one on each end. The Apple branded ones like this, they don't need termination, it's automatic. But with the PhoneNet ones, you do. It's just an RJ11 with a little resistor stuck in there. So another one of these PNet boxes. And then here is another PNet box, also one from the middle without the resistor. And here's another one, so we have 4. There's the LED, and it's got the resistor. So there we go, that's enough to make a complete PhoneNet 4-node system. Okay, and here is, oh look, okay, so this is another one of the 9-pin variety, but with the PhoneNet connections on it. So this is perfect. I can use this on a Mac 128, or I can use this on one of these ISA cards. There is branding on here, ZZ Turbo Telnet. And it looks like we have another one of these, the ZZ Telnets Turbo, but this one has the round serial connector on it. And there is one more. So this looks like a clone AppleTalk device. So it uses the AppleTalk round DIN 3, as I think this is an AppleTalk DIN 3 to probably a phone jack that was used in Europe, maybe Germany, where Jonas sent this stuff in. But perhaps this was a way to get your AppleTalk network plugged into your empty phone jack that wasn't connected to the telephone network. And on another room, you would have another one of these, and then you had AppleTalk in that room. It was like a way to use the house wiring. And then there is one more AppleTalk adapter. This was bundled with that. So it's a standard mini DIN serial to a dual DIN 3. Let me cut this zip tie off. Maybe this thing is open and we can take a look inside. Let's see if this just comes apart. Yep, it does. So there are the 2 DIN 3 connectors. We got 5 resistors, capacitor, and whatever this black thing is here. I don't know what that is. It's unlabeled, so maybe it's like an inductor, 4-pin inductor or something like that, a little transformer or something like that. Sure does appear that these 2 DIN 3s, though, are just wired completely in parallel, so there's not a lot of trickery going on in here. So just not quite sure what that this black 4-pin part does in here. Now I gotta say, this bounty of AppleTalk stuff is pretty awesome, especially these ISA interface cards. So I'll need to try to get this stuff working. I do have a ton of other AppleTalk stuff people have sent in, so thank you to everyone who's done that, including lots more of these PhoneNet adapters. I am set for life on those. And then I have some AppleTalk to Ethernet gateways. I think I have at least 1, maybe more of those. So I want to try to get AppleTalk up and running on a Raspberry Pi over Ethernet using that bridge to this older style transport here. And I know there's transport names like AppleTalk versus Local Talk and EtherTalk and all that kind of stuff. I always mix those up, so I apologize. People are probably screaming at their screen right now because I'm using the wrong terminology. If anyone has a pre-built Raspberry Pi image that already has the AppleTalk and AppleShare server set up that is compatible with sharing to these old machines over this old AppleTalk transport layer, please let me know. Send me an email, because I tried getting one of those up and running and I struggled for several hours. Compatibility, old versions of the AppleShare server that's available for Linux. It was a bit confusing and I didn't have time to really stick with it, so I put it on the back burner. If I get a pre-built image, that will jumpstart my ability to get this up and running, so perhaps I can get a video out sooner about AppleTalk. All right, moving on to non-AppleTalk related stuff. This is the next thing that Jonas sent me. This is a 512 megabyte SCSI solid state drive, and look at it. It's 3.5-inch form factor. It's definitely the full height of those early 3.5-inch drives, not like the full height, I guess half height it's considered. And yeah, this is really big compared to current modern solid states, even the 2.5-inch ones we've had for years. This is interesting. Made by M Systems, flash disk pioneers. Ultra-wide SCSI flash disk, 80-pin. Yes, it has an adapter on there to work on a Macintosh. Made in Israel. What? I have never seen something like this. 5 volts, warning, ESD sensitive. Uh-oh, my bench, I don't have ESD protection. So yeah, wow, fascinating stuff. Looks like on the front there are some dip switches here, and luckily there's a little chart here. that shows the little configuration. So single-ended, termination, and then some ID stuff. So I have the drive connected to my Windows 10 bench PC. It is powered up. There's a green power LED here. I have termination enabled, and I have a ribbon cable that pops out of the back of this PC, comes to here. So let's take a look at what this looks like, and then I can run some benchmarks on it. Well, it just showed right up in Windows. Looks like it's already formatted as a fat drive, E. So why don't I open this? Let's look at what's on it. Absolutely nothing is on it. So I'm just going to reformat this as NTFS, and then we'll do a little performance benchmarks. From a performance standpoint, this drive is not fast compared to modern SSDs, but we have to remember it's running over 8-bit SCSI as opposed to 16-bit. This probably cuts performance in half, which you can see in the read speed because it kind of plateaus. Looking at some information I found from 2003 when this drive came out, seems like yes, the read speed should have been about 30 megabytes a second. It does also say this thing cost $20,000, although I'm not sure what capacity that price was for. This device was probably targeting older embedded systems that were probably still in use, because I think at this time, most things had moved on to SATA or much faster versions of SCSI. Let's just pop the cover on this thing. Oh wow, those screws are on tight. I'd say there's some thread lock on these. Warranty void if broken. Oh no. Ah, they tricked me. There's a screw underneath here. I was like, I've cut through the seal. Why isn't it opening? All right, moment of truth. What do we see? Ah, it's pretty boring under here, actually. Well, I was trying to get the board out so we could kind of look. I could see there's another PCB under there sandwiched. Maybe there are little vertical cards coming off this. I'm not too sure. But it seems like it doesn't want to initially come out, and there might be screws under this top sticker, not to mention there's double-sided tape holding this adapter on, so that's going to keep the board in. So I think at this point, I'm not going to go any further. So just take a look at what this controller looks like. I want to put this SSD in the Mac IIsi right now, but unfortunately the power cable, which plugs in the motherboard right here, is too short to reach over to there. Luckily, I have this old Mac Classic board that a viewer sent in on mail call that has some smashed components on here. And it looks like this has a much longer power cord, so I will just steal this. And there's actually room under the hard drive to route that extra cable length. So now this wire is out of the way and it's not overlapping where these PDS slot is. And the SSD is all set up in this machine. It's working perfectly. As for it being much faster than a hard drive like it is on modern computers when you switch from spinning to SSD, not so much on this one. I actually ran some benchmarks here with speedometer. I ran the full suite of tests primarily because we're going to be comparing some things that speed up this computer to the stock configuration. But right here under the disk speed, it's 1.378. And a 1.0 is the same speed as a Quadra 605, which is quite a faster computer than this one, but it has a regular spinning hard drive. So yeah, it's faster than a Quadra 605 and its hard drive, but it's not like this says 20 times faster. It's not even really noticeable, the speed increase just using this computer. So I think the big claim to fame with these SSD drives early on wasn't about the performance like they are now. It was more to do with they were very reliable in a high stress environment, whether it be vibration or heat or cold, things like that. So perfect for factories or avionics on an airplane, stuff like that, where a spinning hard drive might be damaged when subjected to all the vibrations. All right, moving on. Remember I mentioned that the IIsi, like the SE-30, has a PDS slot, processor direct slot. This is different than the NuBus slot on later machines. So Jonas went ahead and sent me a plethora of PDS things. So let's take a look at these. The first thing to look at is this. It's a PDS right angle adapter for the Mac IIsi, actually. So it plugs into the motherboard here, and then it allows you to plug a larger PDS slot into this slot, at a 90-degree angle. In addition, it has this socket here, which is for the math coprocessor. Unfortunately, it's not populated, and I don't have one to put in here, so I can't necessarily test that. So this right angle adapter is about the maximum height in the Mac IIsi that you can have. But as you see, this card here is actually taller. And that's because this was probably designed for something like the Mac IIci or the Mac IIcx, which just are a physically larger case and can accommodate a larger card. Now what this card is here, it's a Daystar Systems Accelerator card. And it looks like, if I can read this correctly, it is a 68030 40 megahertz, and it comes with this math coprocessor. Some of these accelerator cards actually have additional cache memory as well, which really speeds up the computer, but I'm not sure that this one has that. These chips here, I don't think these are cache memory chips. But with this right angle adapter here, you can connect this card like this, And then this setup here should work in this Mac IIsi. And of course, we don't need the math coprocessor because there's one right here on this card. Putting this setup aside for a second, there's another IIsi right angle PDS adapter, but this one is different. This one's different in that, yes, it has the math coprocessor connector, but look at all these other chips on here. And what this is, it's actually a Radius, which is a company that made a lot of Macintosh accessories back in the day. It's a video card. So it gives this computer accelerated or potentially higher resolution video, in addition to allowing you to still plug in a PDS card slot. So I could plug in that accelerator into this card, and that would give us the video and the faster CPU. Now, unfortunately, it uses this weird connector here for the video connector, and I don't have that cable. So this card probably works. Oh, there's more RAM on the back there, but I'd have to rig up something to kind of get this working, and yeah. And then we have one more PDS card here. And now this looks quite a bit different than the other ones, right? At least from the form factor perspective. And that's because this is designed specifically for the Mac SE-30. As far as I'm aware, the PDS connector that's on the Mac SE-30 and the Mac IIsi and the Mac IIci and IIcx all is electrically and signal-wise the same. So it's totally compatible to plug these different modules into all these computers. But of course you have these form factor differences that would prevent that from happening. And in the Mac SE-30, this plugs into the motherboard like this, and it slots into the chassis. It has to have this shape for it to really work. And that means that I can't really use stuff like this video card. And of course this right angle won't work because that puts the extra card right in where the drives are in that machine. But that's not to say I couldn't take this card and plug this into the right angle adapter, and this might actually work inside this IIsi. I think there's actually enough room to accommodate this card. So this card here came with this little thing here, which screws into the back of the SE-30 and has this connector here, this coax cable. And on the list that Jonas sent, he thought that this card was actually an Ethernet card with coax Ethernet. But actually, no, when you take a look at this card, this is a video card for the SE-30. Now it's a monochrome one because we have a single output here. It's probably high resolution, 1024 by 768, that kind of thing. But yeah, this would give the Mac SE-30 external monitor support. And what really gives it away as a video card, of course, is it has this RAM right here, which an Ethernet card would not have. In addition, it has this BT chip here, which is most likely the digital to analog converter used for the video output. So let's test out some of these cards in the Mac IIsi. We'll start with this right angle one without the math coprocessor and the Daystar Accelerator card. And this should just plug straight into the motherboard here. And it does. And obviously from a clearance standpoint, no issues whatsoever. All right, let's turn this on. Do we get the Happy Mac sound? No, we don't. It just immediately is causing the power supply to turn off. That means to me that there's probably a shorted tantalum either on the accelerator card or on this right angle card. I'll just break out the multimeter here and quickly check these tantalums here. Look for any kind of shorts. I'm just testing the accelerator card first. So far I'm not getting any. Yeah, I'm not getting any shorts on this either. So I wonder why the computer wasn't starting up. Let's try without the card installed. Okay, everything is fine. So I'm going to plug the accelerator card directly into the motherboard. Of course, it won't physically fit this way because of the case height, but it should be able to use it, at least with the case off. Here we go. Nope. It's this accelerator card that's causing it to not start. So I'll have to do some troubleshooting on this at a future time. I don't have time in this video, but I'll just mark this right now as causes computer to not start. I'll just pop in the right angle adapter. I am sure that this will work fine. Yeah, okay, so that starts up, no issue. So it's definitely that accelerator card that's causing an issue. All right, next I want to try out this SE-30 video card, which like I said, even though it clearly isn't gonna work in this case, sticking up like that, it should actually still work in the computer. So here we go. Okay, nice, at least it's booting up. Now I had mentioned that it uses this coax cable, so this is a high resolution composite video signal. So it's not like I have a high resolution composite monitor floating around that can handle non-interlaced 1024 by 768 or something like that. So I'll have to probably see what I can do to make this work. The only thing I'm thinking is that my monitor here, this Acer, supports sync on green. So theoretically, I could just feed this signal directly into the green pin on the VGA input, and maybe that would actually work. If we go under monitors, maybe I will see that second monitor. Oh, I don't. So maybe this needs some kind of drivers or something like that to actually work. So I'm on vintageapple.org looking for the SE-30 drivers, or the drivers for this Radius TPD 2-page display. And unfortunately, everything they seem to have here is specifically for the SE or Plus or Accelerator cards, things like that. I don't see anything for this card. And I'm also not sure if this card even needs drivers. It does have a ROM chip on here, but is it incompatible with System 7? Or does it not work in anything except for the SE-30? Not quite sure about that. I do have an SE-30 I can test this in, but I'm just assuming it should have showed up already here in this system. If anyone has thoughts about using this Radius 2-page display on System 7, like where I can get drivers, or if I need drivers or manuals, things like that, please let me know in the comments section below. All right, so let's give this video card a try. Even though I don't have the connector here, at least if I see this in the system showing up under monitors, then maybe I can figure out the wiring here and hook that up. As a side note, I'm gonna hook this 2-page display up here. I just wanna see if this all fits into this machine and clears everything. It does, it absolutely does. So theoretically, with a little support on this side of the card here, I could have the internal video, I could have this video card and this video card, 3 monitors on this computer. I just love that. But I'm just gonna try this on its own without that SE-30 card hanging off of it. Well, once again, I'm not seeing any other monitors except for the built-in monitor in the monitor control panel, but there is one thing to consider. With cards like this that have multiple pins, it actually is able to sense if you plug the monitor into it because there's different sense lines for the resolution of your monitor, things like that. This is in comparison to this SE-30 card with it's just a single coax, where this shouldn't be able to tell you have a monitor plugged in. It should just think it's always plugged in. But this might know that there's nothing there, so it's not gonna necessarily show up in here. I'm not totally sure on that. So again, if anyone knows if you need drivers for this or can point me to the manual to figure out the pin out of this, just to save me a little bit of time, so I could try to hook a monitor directly up to this, please let me know. So that kind of leaves me at 0 for 4 for these PDS parts here. The accelerator is shorted and the 2 video cards, they don't seem to do anything, but they may need drivers. And this card here obviously probably works fine because there's nothing to it. I just need a math coprocessor to put on it. While looking at PDS parts, let's take a look at this original NuBus adapter that was in this machine. And it actually has the math coprocessor right there. And we'll plug in this original big video card into it here and see if this thing works. I'm realizing now that the hard drive bracket that I put in here may actually be too tall and hit the card here. So let me just put this in and see if that is the case. So it clears on the left side here, but on the right side, it actually is just touching, but it's actually okay because Apple installed these plastic things on the little raised sections, and that's the part that is just touching. So I feel okay, at least temporarily, using the card like this with it resting on the hard drive bracket. All right, here we go. Let's turn this on. Hey, that sounds like a good sound right there. So I'm currently plugged into the internal motherboard, and let's see if we see it. Ah, look at that. There's the second card. And look, it goes all the way up to millions of colors. And look, it supports all sorts of resolutions here. 640 by 480, 640 by 870. That's for a portrait display. 800 by 600, 1024 by 768 at 2 different refresh rates. Why don't we pick 640 by 480, which is just the same as the Apple regular monitor. And we'll pick, I don't know, millions of colors, I guess. Okay, interesting. The computer seems to have frozen when I tried to close the monitor control panel. Perhaps with the missing driver, this doesn't work so well either. I've plugged the monitor into the card directly. Now, I've done enough reading on these cards to know that some of the monitors that they sold with them used kind of non-standard sync signals and video levels and things like that. So there's a good chance that this won't work on my monitor at all, or it's going to display weirdly. So let's turn this back on, see if we get anything. Remember, I have the dip switches on here set for an Apple 13-inch monitor, so 640 by 480. So we may or may not get any picture. Okay, we're getting a sync here on the monitor. Oh, RasterOps. Look at that little startup screen. Okay, but look how screwy everything looks. It's extremely overblown. Like this should be black over here, and it's not. System file may be damaged? What? How rude. Hey, look, it actually looks good now. The color levels are correct. How funny. And look, it's actually good now. It's gonna crash at startup still. Yeah, I'm gonna need to recover that. I wonder why it was so overblown the first time. So I have the zip drive out here because I am trying to boot off of it so I can fix the system file that got corrupted. Unfortunately, I had to unplug the hard drive here, which necessitated me removing the video card because it's so big. So I unplugged the internal drive. I'll then plug it back in now that it's booted up, use SCSI mounter to mount it, and then I'll copy the System7 file off this back onto this hard drive. Now here's the internal hard drive, and this is the system file from my zip disk. I'll just overwrite that. Yes, we want to overwrite that. While I'm at it, I'm just going to run disk first aid on the internal hard drive just to make sure that that didn't somehow screw something up. I'll do repair on it. And it had absolutely no problems. Excellent. So now I'll just restart this computer and it should boot back off the internal drive. Appears to be working fine again, and it's interesting, it's back into black and white mode, which is how the zip disk was. So clearly the color settings for the monitor are stored in the system file itself, which is probably why it screwed it up and kind of died there. All right, here we go again. Monitor's connected. Power this up. I want to try a little bit of speed test diagnostics and stuff. There it is again with that really washed out. Oh, and it just crashed. I wonder if this card is not compatible with System 7. It's weird how on the restart, now it looks good. We don't have that washed out look anymore. I can't believe it just completely crashed. It just crashed immediately. Wait, now it's not working. Oh, wait, now it's not crashing. Okay. Weird. I don't know what's going on. It could be that this card is just not compatible fully with System 7.1. But let's run the speedometer tests again and just see if we have any improvement. There's also a math coprocessor in here now because of that edge connector thing. So that could improve speeds a little bit as well. And indeed, there it is, MC68882. That's the floating point coprocessor. First, I'm going to quickly redo the performance test, just the graphics and the math, because obviously there's not going to be any change with the CPU or the disk. All tests are done. So I can do a system comparison, and I saved the previous results. So the math speed went from 0.81, that's relative to a Quadra 605 or whatever it was, to 1.27, so a nice bump. And then the graphics speed went from 0.31 to 0.26, an actual decrease. I'm just going to quickly run the color quick draw test here all the way up to 8-bit, which matches the internal video, and we'll compare to see if there's a speed up or decrease as well. The extra graphics tests are done, and it does appear that the 256 color or 8-bit color mode is slightly faster at 0.25 versus 0.23, but all the other modes, the lower color modes, are slower on this card. Now, of course, this card supports 16-bit and 24-bit modes, which the internal video does not do. So from that perspective, you can get high color or true color modes using this card, which are a huge benefit. There are later video cards for the Macintosh that did have hardware acceleration built onto the card, but clearly this is not one of them. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it does not seem like this is accelerated. There is no hardware blittering going on, so the CPU on the motherboard is having to push all these pixels around in the video RAM, which of course is slower than if you're doing it with accelerated cards. Now, why is this card slower than what's on the motherboard? I'm not quite sure. Maybe the CPU has a direct connection to the system RAM on the motherboard, while on this card it's having to go through those NuBus transceivers, and then there's a 32-bit NuBus in the middle, and maybe it's 16 megahertz versus 20 on the motherboard for the CPU. I don't know, but either way, without acceleration, this card is just going to be kind of sluggish. All right, so the computer is now running in millions of color mode, 24-bit mode, so the CPU has to push around 3 times more pixels than 256 colors. And it is definitely apparent. I mean, look how slowly it moves that window. Scrolling, oh yeah, scrolling is pretty bad as well. So from a performance perspective, running in millions of colors, when you don't have accelerated video, it's kind of miserable. And I suppose there were probably people who were doing this, and I think this card probably has enough video memory to run it at 1024 by 768 in millions of colors. And with a CPU as slow as this on this machine, yeah, that's not going to be, it's kind of a miserable experience. And look how slow the menus draw. Yep. This card has 1992 date code, so this card was probably extremely expensive. In fact, a bunch of these chips, while the date code is 92, it actually has a copyright of 1990 date on here. And I would imagine in 1990 when this thing came out, wow, it was probably a multi-$1,000 video card for true professionals. Well, moving back to donations from Jonas, he actually sent along some NuBus cards as well. So let's take a look at these. The first card we're going to take a look at, it's another NuBus video card. So 15-pin connector on the output there. And this one is made by Radius. So RasterOps and Radius were the two manufacturers that just made so many Macintosh accessories at the time for these machines. They were just big companies that supplied professional level graphics products. This is another video card, as I said, has a lot less memory on it, has just this much. So this most likely doesn't support nearly as big of a display with as many colors as this. This has a copyright date of 1991 there. It says Precision Color 8-XJ. So 8, does that mean this is only an 8-bit color display? It might be. But the reason for this card existing is it might support larger monitors at 8-bit. So you're not stuck with just 640 by 480 like you are with a built-in video on the Mac IIci, Mac IIsi, stuff like that. So this would allow us to run at a higher resolution. So let's pop this in. There's no clearance issues with the hard drive bracket because the card's a lot smaller. I'm just going to plug this in first, set to 640 by 480, and we'll just see if it works as was the other card, and then we'll try to ramp up the resolution. Oh, we got a picture. It's in black and white mode, but it is absolutely working. And sure enough, 256 colors seem to be the maximum, even for this small resolution size. So this thing just doesn't support anything higher. Let me just do a quick performance test and check for the speed versus the internal motherboard. All right, the tests are complete. It doesn't support 2-bit color mode on this card, which is no big loss. Whoever needs 4 colors, how silly is that? Anyhow, 8-bit color is, again, slightly faster than the internal motherboard. Actually, it's a little bit more than slightly, 0.29 versus 0.23. The other color depths are all a little bit slower, just like they were on that other card. But it's a nice speed improvement, to be honest, this 0.29. I mean, if it was accelerated again, it would probably be leaps and bounds faster, but at least in this testing, it's just a slightly faster thing. Well, I've been fiddling around with the jumper settings on this thing, and I just haven't been having any luck. Oh, look, there's even a startup screen there. It says Radius. It's in 640 by 480 mode again. There's a million switch settings on that little dongle thing, and clearly they don't seem to line up with what this card is expecting. So in the absence of time, I need to move on. But I'm sure that this card most likely supports high resolution like 1024 by 768 at 8-bit color mode. I just don't seem to be able to get to it. Or most likely there's also a driver for this card that probably allows some dynamic resolution switching for multi-sync monitors. I don't think Mac OS 7.1, which is what I'm running, natively supports that. Next up for NuBus cards, Jonas sent me 2 network cards. The one in my left hand is an Apple card that has the Apple AAUI connector on the back. And then this one in my right hand is, who makes this thing? Sonic Systems, the diskless Mac. So this obviously supports some kind of net boot. Not sure who makes this card, but it's got AUI, Ethernet, 10BASE-T that is, and coax on the back. So this is most likely a 10 megabit card, as is this. Interesting about the Apple card is, look at that, 68,000, 10 megahertz. That's quite a beefy processor for a card that you were adding into a machine that might have a 68020 or an 030. Pretty amusing. Let's test out this one first. That's for the diskless Mac. I'm assuming these all need drivers, which I'm gonna have to go on the hunt for. All right, there we go. Let's turn this on. Now, while this boots up, what's interesting about this Apple card is you do need that special little adapter, but in a previous mail call, one of my lovely viewers sent in this Asante FriendlyNet adapter, which has 10BASE-T, and there it is, the AAUI jack. So I happen to have the right thing to actually utilize this. Apple did use this type of connection for quite a while on Macs before they started actually including an RJ45 type jack on the motherboard. Originally, this is all you got, and you always had to buy one of these adapters because they thought, well, if you needed coax or you needed some other type of transport, you could get that with this. But the reality is people quickly moved to 10BASE-T, and that was that. So including this just meant it was something extra you had to buy. So I opened up Network here thinking that there might be something else in here. And of course, there's not, just the built-in local talk. So it doesn't show Ethernet or EtherTalk here. But that kind of goes without saying without the driver. So I'm just going to quickly do a quick search for drivers and see if I can find anything. Well, that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. I have an Ethernet cable plugged into this, and I have a managed switch, luckily, so I'm able to set it to 10 megabits half duplex because it's a gig switch, and I think gig switches do not auto-negotiate correctly with 10 megabit. So that is working from a physical layer. And then I went out and I found the drivers for this, but it turned out I didn't even need them because when I went to Mac TCP, in there was all of a sudden Ethernet. So I gave it a static IP on my network, and I have NCSA telnet on here. And there it is. I'm actually telnetted into my switch right now. And I gave this Mac an IP of 10.0.0.0.64. And my core switch is pinging this computer successfully. So that works. So what I would really like to get working is the AppleTalk or EtherTalk over Ethernet. So if I go in the control panel under network, here is built-in local talk. That's the serial connection on the motherboard. But then it has EtherTalk here, which would be over the Ethernet cable. And that goes back again to the Raspberry Pi running an AppleShare server on Linux. So then I could talk directly to it with this computer, or using that EtherTalk to AppleTalk or local talk, is it bridge? That's the old style AppleTalk to Ethernet. I could have a server like a Raspberry Pi communicate with a bunch of the older machines like the Mac Pluses, so I could copy files onto them more easily. To get the drivers I downloaded onto this computer, I used a zip drive, and I put a PC formatted zip disk in my Windows 10 computer, copied the files onto it, then stuck it in this computer, which it was able to read, and then I copied those drivers over. So this would eliminate that whole zip drive thing and having to plug it in and whatever. I could just keep it plugged into AppleTalk and be able to copy files directly off the AppleShare server running on a Pi. All right, so the Apple card is installed. I have a link light to my switch, but when I try to do a telnet, it just gave me these internal errors. It does show up in Mac TCP, so I'm trying to figure out if I need to install drivers or what. I mean, it is seeing the card under Mac TCP, and under networks, it shows the Ethernet card, but it doesn't seem to be working. So I mounted the driver disk for the Apple card and also the driver disk for that Sonic card. And the Sonic card has a little program here called Inside Ethernet. It's like a little diagnostic program, and let's just run this. So slot 9, Apple Ethernet NuBus card. So it was showing when I had the other card, the Sonic card in here, I could click it and I could click test and I could see a little bit of a test thing going on. It doesn't allow me to see it, but at least this shows me that that card is installed and being seen in the computer. But I kind of knew that because it is showing up in those control panels. I don't know, I suppose I could just run the installer, see what happens. I'm gonna try that. So lots of options here. Ethernet driver for NuBus LC2SI. Okay, I guess I'm gonna try that one. AppleTalk and EtherTalk non-open transport. Yeah, I do not have open transport installed in this computer, so I'll just leave that off. I'll just put the driver here and see if that makes this work better. Install successful, restart your Mac to use your new software. All right. And that didn't fix it. Still getting these random stupid errors on this Apple card. And this just worked perfectly on the other card. I do have a copy of Netscape Navigator 2, but I just do not think this computer has enough RAM to run this. Let's just try. Oh, interesting. Netscape was unable to create a network socket. There may be insufficient resources, or the network may be down. Reason, network is down. Oh, okay. So I guess the problem is maybe I'm not getting a link. Okay, so maybe there's a problem. I mean, there is, I'm getting two different lights here on this little dongle. In fact, when I plug this in, one of them is orange, I guess that's power, but the other one does light up when I put the Ethernet cable in. There it is. And I can see on my network switch up on the wall there that there is a link light as well for 10 megabits. And like I said, we just saw this was working perfectly with that other card. Yeah, network is down. Okay, well, so it appears there's something wrong either with this card or this adapter here. So if anyone has any ideas, please let me know. Otherwise, at least I have one working NuBus card. Well, that's it for all the NuBus and PDS card testing. So that means the Mac IIsi has done its job. I'm gonna put this thing back together. And there we go. Thank you, Mac IIsi. You will need to be retrofited really badly in the future. I'm gonna be leaving this Apple Ethernet card in here because I wanna put the video card and the other working Ethernet card in my Mac IIci. I use that computer more often, I love it, and of course it has multiple card slots for NuBus cards and it has the 68040 accelerator, so it's a lot faster than this machine. But this computer is still pretty cool, and I'm glad I was able to do all that PDS testing with this machine. All right, we're nearly done with all the stuff that Jonas has sent me. This little pile is the last of it. Let's look at the first thing here. All right, so what this appears to be is something made by Daystar that must plug into the motherboard where there's a CPU and a math coprocessor, and then it gives it a PDS slot. Notice it's mounted at an angle, which is kind of interesting. Now the spacing of these chips means I'm not exactly sure what this goes on, not to mention this angled connector here means that the card that you plug into it will go off at an angle. So there has to be room inside the case. And that means this is probably for the original Mac II, which I don't think had the PDS slot. So there was no way to really install an Accelerator easily unless it plugged directly into the motherboard. So with this, you could use that PDS 40 megahertz accelerator I showed earlier, the one that's not working, it causes the computer to not turn on. But with this adapter, I think you could add that inside the Mac II and give yourself an upgrade. If anyone is familiar with this little card, and if that's what it does, then please let me know. I'd be very curious to hear about that. But I don't have a Mac II, so I have no way to test this. All right, next up is a bag, and he wrote some stuff on here, and it says Mac IIfx ROM 2X, Mac IIsi, or Mac SE-30 2X. It's a little hard to read, but I'm assuming that these are ROMs, basically ROM sticks that go in these various computers. And sure enough there it says 512K ROM SIMM 32, and this one says that as well. And these two, they're 64 pins. I guess these are mask ROMs as well. Oh wait, on the back he wrote 2FX. So is this ROM for the 2FX or RAM for the 2FX? The part number on here is 23C1010G-12 from 1990, Apple branded chips. I know the 2FX uses strange RAM, I think, as well, but perhaps these are ROMs. If anyone's familiar, please let me know. Taking a look at the note he sent, it doesn't say anything about these ROMs or these modules, so I'm just not quite sure about them. And the weird thing is looking at the Mac IIsi, for instance, we were just working on, it has a socket for the ROM, but it wasn't populated because there was stuff on the motherboard. So what exactly would plugging one of these in do? Were these updated ROMs with, for instance, 32-bit clean ROM or something like that? I know the SE-30 ROM is not clean, so you need a ROM upgrade if you want to be able to boot directly to 32-bit operating system without having a patch in their system folder. Okay, and that leaves us with these cards right here. Now this one is something that I've never seen, but I knew existed, but I hadn't seen. So look right here, Radius SE Accelerator. And what this does is you plug this into your Mac SE motherboard and it gives you a Motorola 6820, and I think at 20 megahertz. In fact, judging by the fact that the crystal here is a little over 50 megahertz, perhaps this actually runs at 25 megahertz. Although I see the math coprocessor is marked as 16, but if you notice, the processor, the speed is worn off there. This does have some ROMs installed on it here, Radius Incorporated, SE-25 accelerator. Okay, 25 megahertz, that's probably what that means. 2.01, low beta, high beta. If anyone needs me to dump these ROMs, please let me know. I can do that. And maybe if these are hard to find, who knows? But yeah, this is a pretty cool card, speeding up the Mac SE quite a bit. And I do have a Mac SE. Unfortunately, the machine is away in storage, so I can't easily get to it right now to test this out. But I definitely want to test this out and upgrade that machine. Unfortunately, there's no RAM slots on here, so the RAM that's on the motherboard, which is just a max of 4 megs at a 16-bit data path, is all you're going to get, and that's not going to help speed up this processor because unfortunately this has to slow down to read that motherboard RAM. Now you may be noticing an expansion connector right here on this board, and actually that goes with something that he sent along. This board right here plugs into that expansion connector, and it's actually a right angle connector. So when this is stuck onto the motherboard in the PDS slot, you have to plug this card in like so, and this sticks up inside the case. Now, what is this card, you ask? Well, you look at the ROMs there, it says SE-TPD 2-page display, as in this is a video card for the original Mac SE that gives it a high-resolution external monochrome output. Now for hooking up an external monitor, it would go to this little 2-pin connector here. There was probably a little bracket with a connector on the back of the computer that went to this, and either whatever the connector was came with a monitor that would connect and have the right sync frequencies and support this. And that would let you plug in a large, probably 21-inch screen, 2-page display, 2 full pages of text, and you would be able to really rip your desktop publishing at high speed, pretty high speed for a Mac SE with these chips here. Now, taking a look at the date codes on these chips, this looks to be from around 1987. So at that time, this was a pretty substantial speed increase, and the Mac SE-30, I don't think came out until the following year, 88. So really, this was the fastest way you could get a compact Mac at that time. This or one of the other accelerators that were available on the market. So like I said, I can't get to my Mac SE right now for quick testing of these, but if anyone has any information on manuals or drivers for these, please let me know. I'll be very curious to know what kind of video signal this outputs so I can try to hook this up to a modern LCD monitor to at least see this thing working. And with that, that is everything that Jonas sent me. A huge thank you for sending me that package all the way in from Germany. This stuff is pretty damn cool, and a lot of it is hard to find these days. So hopefully I can get some of this stuff working, like drivers for this SE-30 2-page display would be super cool. And of course that accelerator card, which is right here, I need to try to troubleshoot this and get this working because it would be pretty awesome to speed up that Mac2SI, for instance, by using this in that right angle adapter, which he also sent. And of course I have to thank my nameless benefactor who gave me this Mac2SI. I'm glad to have gotten this computer working. That's pretty awesome. So as far as mail calls, I love making these videos, but they can be pretty time consuming sometimes. And unfortunately, due to the extreme generosity of my viewers, I'm accumulating quite a backlog of things. So if you've sent stuff in and you're wondering why it hasn't been shown on the channel yet, don't worry, I have everything well organized, nothing is lost. I just get to stuff chronologically, and Jonas had sent this stuff in to me quite a while ago, might have been in August. So I feel bad that it's now, what, November? And I'm just getting to this. So I'm gonna try to speed up these mail calls. They're gonna be a little shorter, a little less detailed, and I won't be diving into deep testing of everything I get, but hopefully that way I can keep on top of all the stuff I'm getting. And again, a huge thank you to everyone who sent stuff in. And don't worry, if you haven't seen what you sent in on the channel yet, even if it was months ago, I still have it organized and I will be showing it because there are times when there are things I want to make standalone videos, not just a regular mail call video, because it's such a cool product, I want to focus on it. So anyhow, if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. But if you didn't, you know what to do. You can hit that thumbs down button, hit the subscribe button to subscribe to my channel, and the bell icon if you want to be notified on your phone when I upload new videos. And of course, put your comments and your suggestions in the comment section below. And that's going to be it. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.